in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we did $30,000 cash collected in 7 days in all in cold calling. And this is as soon as we launched the cold callers, we collected over $30,000 from the cold calling team. And I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. So the case study that we're going through today, this is Lamasu Media. So this is a cold calling center in Pereira, Colombia. We'll open up this here. There's me, my very red long hair. But here's me at the call center down in Colombia, where I helped this team launch a brand new product into a brand new market that they had never even worked with before. They had never been inside this niche before. They're like, hey, I think we can do this thing. Kara, can you help me? And I was like, cool. Well, let's use your cold callers to set some appointments and run through a process. And so this is where I created essentially the entire go-to-market strategy so that we could start launching this product. We went through the real estate space, particularly for the product that they had launched, but they had actually never used their own cold callers to set for the appointments to bring in prospects. These cold callers, all these guys here, they were in charge of calling homeowners down in the United States for wholesalers, for guys who like to buy properties for cash. And so when we wanted to launch the SaaS product for these realtors, I was like, why aren't we just using these cold callers to call up these realtors to see if we can set some appointments? And so that's what I'm going to take you through. I'm going to show you exactly what does it take. Okay, so it doesn't matter the industry. I'm going to show you exactly today through this case study, what does it take in order to have cold callers be able to set appointments and close those appointments, right? It's all good when we set appointments, but you got to get that money coming in the door. So I'm going to take you through all of the different steps and the entire real go-to-market strategy that I created to be able to utilize this cold calling team who had never done anything like this before. So the first thing here is that you have to have some really, really good testimonials, okay? You want to be able to create video assets. So I want you to go through and check out, there is what we call the ZMOT. This is the zero moment of truth. Just to shorten it up for you, I want you to go and do some research after watching this video, but essentially Google says, hey, the average prospect, they require 7 hours of FaceTime before they can make a decision to do business with you. So you want to really control that. You want to understand what is it they need to see from you in order to trust you. Because when we use any sort of outbound method, all right, just like the word says, it's super cold. So you want to be able to have these back end assets. So to start us off, you want to have some really, really fire testimonials that show off your product in a way. And so when we launched this, we actually didn't have any customers for this. It was a brand new product this company had launched. They had never sold anything to anyone, which is a real problem. It's really hard to convince somebody that they should buy your stuff when you can't show people that you've actually done it before. So that's where we actually did some free service. We found a really, really good team out in Florida and just did some free service for them and then got some fire results from that. And so because of that, we were able to build in some really, really good testimonials that showcased what this product was all about. And then of course too, we built in some objection handling. So your prospects are going to have some general objections that you should be addressing. We also call these kind of like a flex video, but essentially they are videos that go through false beliefs, that go through objections that they have, that give them a little bit more education. Because what we're going to do is once you've collected these videos, they are going to be a part of the nurturing campaigns that we send people. They're going to be part of the pre-call guides that we send people, and they're going to be a part of the retargeting ads that we want to run on the back end when we are doing cold calling, okay? So that we can really warm these people up, and that zero moment of truth, the ZMOT, you're controlling that journey, okay? So that's step one. Go and collect those assets, create those assets, have them ready to go. Step two, you got to create a killer offer. And so a lot of times when I ask people, what is your offer? It's like, who do you serve? And what is the big outcome that you can promise them? It is not just what you charge. Okay. Please, please, please remember that. If you've ever listened to anything to do with Alex Hormozy, or if you've read the book, $100 million Offers, there's lots of really great trainings out there. But just remember this, is that when we create these offers, we want to create an offer so that it puts us in a category of one, that our prospects are able to make decisions based off of value and not based off of price. You don't want to just be like the cheapest guy on the planet, okay? So you want to come up with a way that you can add a little bit of risk reversal, put a little bit of guarantee. You want to add in some incentives to shorten down the time frame in which they make these decisions, but you want to come up with a really, really good offer, okay? That's the first piece before you go through anything. Now, of course, we are doing cold calling. So we wanted to come up with some really, really, really good scripts. There's different frames that we use when we do cold calling. There is what we call a confused frame. There is a value frame. The frame that we used for here was that we did run with a confused frame, meaning that when we were calling up these people, they assumed that they already knew us when they came through. I'm not going to give you the script today here, guys, as part of this, because it really wouldn't provide you a value. Coming up with the script has to be very tailored towards what your avatar is looking for, what your avatar is trying to achieve in 2024. And it's a very quick way. But what's really, really important is that when you are doing cold calling, is that you have to talk like your prospect. For example, in this space, we specifically worked with realtors. Realtors have a very specific jargon type of language that they use, in their day-to-day work, as well as, when we turned around and did the same thing for wholesalers. Wholesalers have a certain way, in industries where we've worked in tech, in industries where we've worked in dealing with dentists, like you name it, insert the niche here. You want to have your cold callers talking like your prospects. You almost want to be like, hey, like, are you a dentist too? Like, you want your prospects saying that. It's pretty important that they can easily relate to you. But you want to come up with a really, really good cold calling script. But that's not what we're going to go through today, because this is just a case study of how do you collect all this money from cold calling. Next is the benchmark of data. So how do you know that you're going to be successful if you're not collecting and letting the team know what they need to be doing on a daily basis? So I'm talking about how many dials that they need to be making per day, how many connections should be happening, how many appointments should be happening, because what's going to happen is once you start doing cold calling, there are factors that are happening on that rely back to our systems and happen with the actual person doing the cold calling. So let me explain. If your connection rate is very low, meaning you're making a lot of dials and people aren't picking up the phone, there's probably something to do with either A, the data that you're using, aka like the people that you're calling, and then B, that maybe the number got pulled up as spam. Maybe you're using a dialing system that's just not very good and it is getting flagged as like a telemarketer or again as a spam, but the systems are going to affect that, right? So you want to be able to understand what does success need to look like? What are the Moneyball metrics that you need to have in place in order for this to know that you're doing this in the correct way? But the team needs to know that, and the people leading the team need to know that. And this needs to be watched every single day, okay? The frequency that you're calling the same leads, the time that you're choosing to call these leads, all of that stuff really, really needs to be watched. And then, of course, volume. Volume's a big deal. You can't just scrape and find the records of the people of whom it is that you want to call and just call them a few times and then say like, hey, like this isn't the right number, like they're not interested because they're not picking up the phone, like blah, blah, blah. We actually just had a partner the other day. They closed a $50,000 deal and they actually called that lead 22 times. Now, I don't recommend 22. I actually recommend 12. You should be calling every single lead at least 12 times. But through this, make sure that you have an understanding of what does success look like, okay? The next thing here is that we went and created a pre-call guide. So as soon as you book an appointment, what you want to do is you want to fire off a series of emails and texts to really warm those people up. Remember, I talked about Zmot. So that's where we created what we call a pre-call guide. It's got some information about, who we are, what we've done in the industry, how this thing works. You just don't want to give away the farm, okay? If you give them so much information that they just don't have any need to show up to the call because now they understand. If you remember, if we go back here, I said, come up with a killer offer. One of the important pieces is that once we have an understanding of like what that person is trying to achieve, but we're showcasing it in a way of which they've never heard of before. So you have to create some curiosity to be like, oh, this sounds really interesting. Like I should book a call. And so that's where I say, like, don't give away the farm inside of your pre-call guide. But again, it should warm them up to get them to understand. And next piece here is that you want to track the actions, okay? When we're using cold calling and you are sending out, pre-call guides, you're sending out case studies, you're sending out webinars, you're sending out testimonials, you want to pay attention who's coming back to your website, who's actually looking at your stuff, because that is going to be an indicator of like how willing and ready is that prospect going to be to buy from you. So super, super important that you are using some form of a CRM that can recognize the level level of engagement, and that can help you with your BANTS score, right? So the score in which we score our leads is how good they are. You want it to be able to do that. Super, super important. The next piece here is we created avatar training. So I was taking these cold callers who had never talked to this specific avatar ever before. And so how do you talk like them? How do you speak to them? What are they trying to achieve? What do they hate? What are they getting asked about all the time? What are the most common objections that they're going to get? These pieces here, you want to make sure that your team knows, because I always would use an analogy of hunting when I was training these guys, is that when you're getting people to pick up the phone, you have a chance to take your shot. And so if anyone's ever been hunting before and you sit on these platforms and you wait all day for a deer to come across your path, you really only get one shot to take that deer. Otherwise, you've waited all that day for nothing. So it's the same thing, is that when you actually get somebody picking up the phone, you want to make sure that they are ready to go, but that they know and understand that avatar. They know and understand what are the problems, what are the challenges that they currently have, and then how to ask the right questions to understand what their goals are. But again, all relating back to what that niche is. Okay. The next thing here is obviously creating a really, really good pitch deck. So when the appointments actually start to come in, that we actually have a framework, a designated way in which we're going to be putting these people through a sales process so that we can close those people and actually collect the cash. Creating a pitch deck is a small part of closing a deal. Don't let this hold you back from being able to have a really good sales process. In a totally other different training on another day, the sale is 100% won within your discovery process. I promise you, like, what's actually being said as part of the pitch has really nothing to do with closing the deal, but it is something there that you want to have something that's professional and visual and can easily convey how your product or service is going to fix all of their problems. Okay. So remember I told you earlier you were going to be doing some retargeting ads. This is pretty important. So up until this point, we haven't spent a dime on any paid ads, but this is a really great way to really cost effectively get back out in front of your people. So anyone who has shown any sort of interest is going to be getting these ads. Technically, you can take the list and put it up into Facebook, but Facebook really doesn't like it that when you do these custom audiences, if you just acquired this list, that's technically gray hat, black hat, whatever you want to call that. They don't like it. But what I like to do is I want to have a list of anybody who has an upcoming appointment or anybody who has shown us any sort of interest that they continue to see our content from us. So I will launch a $5 a day retargeting ad. You do not need to spend more when you are doing retargeting on Facebook. So you can retarget people who visit landing pages. You can retarget anybody who's booked an appointment. Again, in your CRM, if you're talking to someone and the setter just couldn't get the appointment set, they can add a tag that says that they're interested, and you can set these connections up so that it'll just automatically now go into that audience and then be fed with new ads for them to come through. And then, of course, nurture campaigns. So again, anybody who has booked an appointment, anybody who has shown interest, you want to have a series of text messages and emails that will continue to nurture those people, show them case studies, show them a little bit of ins and outs of the program. Again, don't give away the farm. You still want to create enough curiosity that you can get these people onto a call with you. And then the people who have actually gone through with a demo, they need a different version of those nurture campaigns because they've already seen it. And so now you really have to drive home harder with the actual outcome that you are promising and how the product is all going to work for them to get them to purchase a sale. Of course, it goes without saying, please do not use Google Sheets as your CRM. You want to have a CRM that has some of these features that I just went through with you here. We really like using Go High Level for a lot of partners and projects that we work on. I would say my second best favorite is HubSpot. However, like with Zohos and the HubSpots, is like a lot of these features that I just went with you, they're add-ons and they cost us more money. So to be really cost effective until our companies are making multi-seven figures, like you don't need those big, giant, expensive CRM. So I implore you to go check out something like Go High Level. Now, getting the right data is really, really important. And you don't want just any data. So for this particular setup, I'll give you a little intel here. Because we were going after realtors, we didn't just want any Joe Blow. We wanted the realtors who had the most amount of activity. So we actually went to platforms like Zillow, like Realtor, and we sorted by city and then sorted by who had the most active number of listings. And that's how we got their information. And we got personal names, personal phone numbers. And then again, if you're in a B2B arena, we'll get like, great, awesome. This is actually even easier. Did you know that you can use LinkedIn? Of course you did. However, did you know that you can use LinkedIn and you can actually sort it by revenue levels? There's so much that you can do with LinkedIn. You do not need to use some of these really, really big, expensive data platforms like, for example, Zoom Info. You just need to first have a source that can show you based on a Boolean search, based on providing filters to Sales Navigator to show you all of the people and the roles that they have within there. And then we take other platforms like Phantom Buster, like Seamless.io, and then we go and we scrape the internet and we get their personal phone numbers, okay? Personal emails. This part is super, super, super important. If you are trying to use cold calling to get past a gatekeeper, it becomes very, very hard. What you should be aware of is if you are using personal phone numbers to call employees of companies, you are not protected. That is technically against the spam acts that, the FTC, like, they don't like it. Okay. However, you're calling business owners, the waters aren't as troubled. So B2B cold calling is totally allowed. However, just be careful when you're calling personal phone numbers. But, if you really want to make cold calling work, personal phone numbers are the way to go. Now that you have all these pieces in place, ideally you use a predictive dialer. Okay. What is a predictive dialer? A predictive dialer is when you have multiple people on your floor who are able to make calls, and the system will make a whole bunch of calls at one time. The minute that somebody is connected, it'll pop through. So for this company here, we use a system called Five9, very, very popular. If you aren't doing a ton, now we were a large company and we could do that, and this isn't always there. What you want to do is use something like a triple dialer. I recommend checking out something called Wave, WAVV, or there's also another one called Kixie, KIXIE. And what this will allow you to do is do multiple dials out at a time. And the first person to pick up, that line will go through in your agent. So therefore, if you only have 1-2 people making calls, it's still a really, really effective way in order to do that. Now, what's really important is that when you set up these lists, you want to make sure that the contact stays inside of the list until it's had 12 attempts. Don't just scrape and put all this effort in and only call these leads like once or twice, okay? It's really, really important that you do a lot of dials. You want to sync all of the dial activity to the CRM. If you're leading a cold calling team, you have to see how many times have they been called, what's been the best times. You also want to be able to listen back to the call so that you can coach your team on how to effectively use the scripts, how to effectively handle the various objections that they're getting. And you want to see what kind of speed to lead has happened, right? People are going to be calling back. People are going to be texting back. You have to be able to monitor how your team is responding to those leads. Super, super important. And then, of course, we created a 2-step sales process, meaning that when we booked the appointment, we got in the introductory appointment to make sure, is this person qualified? Should we continue to pursue this person? Is this somebody who has a challenge and a need and that we could help them? Is this the type of client, customer that we seek to work with? If so, yes, then we put them through to a demo process. But we don't put them through or pitch or really talk about the product a whole lot until we know that this is a qualified person. And then, of course, that entire second call is all designed around to understand their biggest pain points and challenges, and then showcase how that product fixes that, and then go for the sale. We try to collect the cash right on that call. Now, of course, in larger B2B transactions, you're going to have a much larger process. I promise you, I've yet to meet an industry or niche where cold calling doesn't work. You just want to tailor your sales process to how your current process is handling now. But usually this whole process here for booking these appointments is just to book an introductory appointment. Okay. Step 4, we launched the team. So we went out and we found some really, really good people who had really, really good skills on the phone. They knew what they were doing. We pulled some of the best guys off our floor. But for you need people who can be comfortable talking on a phone. You need people who have English as a first language. Please do not try to really, really use whomever from wherever in the world. You have to find people that have English as a first language because it's just going to make your calls go a lot smoother. structure. And then, of course, you want to create a commission structure. So I do recommend paying a salary for your employees or your contractors, whatever you want to call them. Typically, I'll just let you know, we really like to hire our setters from South Africa. They do have English as a first language. The dollar exchange works really, really nicely. We use a 600 USD monthly salary, and then we create a commission structure where we call an on-target earnings of between 2 to 3,000, meaning, okay, here's your $600 USD salary base, and then every time you set an appointment that led to a sale, we're going to give you a piece of that commission. And so as long as you can reverse engineer a structure that can get that contractor to be making between 2 to 3,000 by the time that they've been with your company, between 4 to 5 months, it's a win-win scenario for both you and the business owner. Okay. And then, of course, the last and final piece here was daily training. So we actually train our cold callers every single day. Not a day goes by that we do not do training. So every morning before we start, we do role playing, we practice on their objections, we do their call reviews, and we sit around and as a group before they go and they hit the phones. And then we give them a full hour-long lunch. And then when they come back from lunch, we actually go back and we train them all over again, because now they're going to go and hit an afternoon session. So typically, we'll see teams trying to do these like really, really long calling days. And really, like, once you go beyond 6 hours of dialing, it's very, very tiring. So you can structure 8-hour days for your cold calling team to be making these calls, but you really 2 hours of that should be a mix of like their lunch time, their break time, and then additional training time, because you have to be mindful how much it is. And then, of course, having a really, really good team is going to be so important. If you're leading a cold calling team, like, they've got a tough job. You really have to keep them up. I mean, I've had team members who they've gone through the loss of family members. I've had team members just go through some pretty down times. And it's really your job as the leader to hold them up. But once those appointments were coming in a way with this case study here, we collected $30,000 in 7 days. From the time that we launched this cold calling team, we started booking the appointments right away. They would book in the demo straight the next day. We did all this nurturing on the back end. And before we know it, we had put $30,000 in the bank. And the whole company was like, holy crap, Kara, that was so cool. Can we keep doing that? And this is where we just scaled this company up from there and then built them in. But here's the secret sauce that a lot of people I just don't think you pay enough attention to. And that is this. Being able to book appointments through cold calling is one of the most powerful things that a business could ever add to their systems. Because when we're looking for investments or we're looking for an acquisition, this is a channel that no one can ever take away from us, right? Facebook ad accounts, LinkedIn ad accounts, they can be taken away. A cold calling team cannot. It is incredibly, incredibly valuable. So while you are trying to launch this process, and if you go through it and you hit some hiccups and you hit some roadblocks, you got to persevere, because I promise you there is not a niche out there where cold calling does not work. It's just the steps and processes. It's the ZMOD, it's the nurturing, it's how the team is talking to them, it's the scripts that you're using. There is a finesse, but it's very, very possible, as you saw how we did with Lamasu Media. Thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed this case study. And of course, if you ever have any questions, please reach out to the team. Now, let's go close some deals.